I said, give me a cigarette. And he said, you don't smoke. And I said, I do now. Because I was angry, I was bitter, I was rejected, was the real root of that.
Hello, Rick.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good, Beaulah. Thank you.
Welcome to Navigating Life podcast. Will you tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Yes, I grew up in Fort Worth, Texas, on the west side. My father worked at General Dynamics. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, and I have one sister that's 9 years older than me, and it's almost like having two moms. But as a youngster, we had a great time out there in the west side of town. From 9 to 12, right around that age group, I was with the Texas Boys Choir, always very heavy into music and high quality music, trained in classical piano, always a musician, and thankfully with music theory and things like that. But when I was about 14, I got an electric guitar, and from the electric guitar, I picked up some keyboards, since that's my main skill. I was one of around 3 or 4 keyboard players in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, and so even though I was like 15 years old, I was marketable because I was one of the few that had the equipment and the skills to play keyboard, and so I was with a fairly popular local band. We played regularly and made really good money. I was making good money for a 15 or 16-year-old back then, and we had places we would play, and along with that came the struggles of all the impact of anywhere from the lyrics of the songs that I sang, just to being on stage and thinking I was all that. We had fun. We really did have a great time. The guys in my band were super. I think I was the punk in the group. I was the youngest guy. I tried to always act out and be the main thing, but we really did have a good time.
That's amazing. You had such amazing rock star life as a teenager.
Way too young to be around the people we were around. We actually warmed up for the Box Tops, the Grassroots, the Doors, Sonny and Cher, some major groups, and there I was, 15, 16 years old. We played, and then the next stage over, the Doors would play, which were very, it was cool for me at the time, but I never realized actually how big that was, because I'd been with the boys choir and I'd been on stage in Boston, New York and things, and so I wasn't overwhelmed with famous people, but still it was cool, and we didn't realize really what we were doing and who we were with at the time.
Talk to us a little bit about your struggles as a teenager with this famous lifestyle you had.
It was kind of like that. Well, growing up and being a piano player, it's always like, hey, Rick, play for somebody, do this. And it puts you on a performance trap, I would call it, where you feel like you're always on stage. And a lot of people struggle with the fame game, I call it. There's like four games people play, which is fame game, same game, and there's also the shame game and the same game. All of those 4 areas where we feel like if we're like other people, or if we get their approval, or we're famous, or we have something about us that's special, all of that is the way we compensate in life. And so I was on the performance trap, the fame game maybe, and so I always felt like I was somebody at that time. And as far as the struggle goes, when I was around 16 years old, on my birthday, the drummer's sister, who I was dating at the time, broke up with me. And again, the end of the world was happening. And it really wasn't. But I was reading...
For a 16-year-old.
For a 16-year-old, it's as real as your right arm. And I was looking at Dr. Henry Cloud that said, our life is a movie, not a scene. And at that moment, it was a scene, but it was a big scene. And I turned to my drummer after I found out about that. We were riding in our van. We had a Volkswagen van, just like every good 60s person would have. And I said, give me a cigarette. And he said, you don't smoke. And I said, I do now. Because I was angry, I was bitter, I was rejected, was the real root of that. Or I felt the rejection. And by the way, she was a very good friend, encouraged me, even encouraged me in ministry. And so it was not just losing a girlfriend, it was losing a friend. Or I felt like it was. And End of story. We became good friends again. Just quickly want to remind you of that. And she became a very wonderful Bible teacher on the east side of town. And so we eventually became really good friends. But at the time, I was dealing with something that every student seems to deal with, which is the pain of rejection, the pain of, what am I going to do now? I mean, my life is over type of thing, which it wasn't. Yeah. But it also led me to other relationships probably that I shouldn't have been in, looking for a replacement quickly, as everyone does. Now I'm nobody. I need to quickly get a replacement girlfriend. And so the replacement girlfriend I picked wasn't exactly as good as my other one. I wasn't making good choices. A year later, what happened? I was driving on Interstate 30, the west side of Fort Worth, right under the Cherry Street Bridge, and I was listening to Led Zeppelin, loud as I could in my car, and I pretty much heard an audible voice, and the voice said, "If you keep doing this, you're going down the tubes." I went, "What?" I didn't ask for that. I'm listening to some cool rock music. Well, basically, then I heard, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him and he'll direct your paths." I went, "What? Where did that come from?" There's a scripture that I learned in sixth grade Bible school. Then, after passing that off, I heard, "Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you." I was going, "Whoa, this is crazy." Then again, I heard, "You keep going this way, you're going down the tubes." At that point, there was something really real about it. And I think I said, "Yes, sir," just out loud. Okay. At that moment, the decision was made. The line was drawn in the sand, which I think everyone needs to come to that place when they face their reality. The line was in the sand. And even though I was great with my friends in my band, I determined, it was almost exactly a year after that, about age 17, I needed to quit my band, break up with a girlfriend, concentrate on school and friends and God. And I started doing that, and they didn't really understand. I said, "Guys, I just can't tell you, but I just can't continue this right now." And in school, my senior year, we were establishing a school. It was the west side of Fort Worth. And I got to be involved with that and serve people. I had a lot of popularity as being one of the seniors. And so I had a lot of influence, and God told me to use that influence for him, not for me. And so I served people. I sat with people that were lonely, and I cared for people, tried to make friends with anyone I could and just listen and care. He basically was preparing me for ministry, and I didn't know it at the time. I'd been called, I thought, in ninth grade for some kind of special type of ministry, but that all went away with all the frustrations and things. But in January of that year, I surrendered to the ministry full time, and actually was licensed as a minister. Did my first wedding when I was almost 18. I was sweating more than the bride and groom, but I was actually began to do things, and I'd been asked to lead worship for a junior high camp, and God all the time was orchestrating things off to the side that I wasn't paying attention to until he woke me up and said, "You need to look over here. This is what life is about. This is what your life is all about." So it was a time that I still struggled a little bit through college with that fame thing, going into music. I majored in music, and so I still struggled a little bit with life there. And God sent some people into my life to say, "Hey, that's, you think you're all that, but put your finger in a pan of water, stick it in there and pull it out and see what an impression you made," which was none. In other words, they were calling me out, and I'm very grateful for all those people that said, well, they humbled me. And humility was, I think I overcompensated for my insecurity with the act of, I'm totally secure. How many people do that?
Yeah.
I've met beauty queens that came in second. I actually know a true story of one in Portland that came in second, was distraught because all she did was come in second. She was not first, so someone was prettier than her. Yeah. We always compare with other people instead of just accepting who we are. So there I was, and called out, and finally the Lord really matured me. And about the smoking, what did I do with that? Well, I hated it because there I was doing ministry. I had friends around me, and yet I would put smells in their hair and all around. And I said, "God, take this away."
Mm.
And he gave me the worst case of the flu I ever had in my life for 2 weeks. I couldn't touch a cigarette. Never have touched one since, because the answer was for me to just be in a place where I couldn't need it or want it. And so I've been free. But I was up to 2 to 3 packs a day for a while until God took it away, and literally took it away from me.
Yeah.
So that was the adventure of that addiction.
So how would you say, like, someone that is watching us right now and that is struggling with addiction, could be smoking, could be anything else, like what would you say to them?
Well, we think when we do something like that, we self harm. What we basically are doing, we'll say, is, I call it, I'll show you behavior. Like I'm saying, okay, you hurt me. You hurt me. Here, take that. Take that. And I'm hurting myself.
Yeah.
Every time I would smoke, it would be like a burning sacrifice to the pain I was experiencing back when it first happened. So what I was doing was bringing it up and allowing that hurt to continue to hurt me, thinking I was compensating, thinking I was medicating the pain, which is actually what we're really doing.
Right.
Whether it's drugs, whether it's, whatever choice we make there, it's to medicate. If we have a headache, we take an aspirin or something. If we have a heartache, then we do these crazy self-harm things. Unless we're secure, we realize that life isn't over, and there's another day that we have, and we don't need to do I call it doing stupid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But a lot of people do that. And so I would say, take that, look at the causes of why those addictions started in the first place, which is anger, depression, blaming someone in your past that did something and hurt you and never made it right. I would say, has anyone ever hurt you and never made it right? Because that unforgiveness there, I think, is a real key to what's going on. Bitterness, allowing that to root in us, and then we end up hurting ourselves because that in our minds we think we're handling things and we have control.
Yeah.
But we really don't. We are being controlled by the substance. So that those cigarettes would tell me when to smoke them, that I needed them to do everything. And so the addiction eventually takes over. Even though you don't want it, it's controlling.
Yeah. I think that's the struggle, right?
Yes.
Because you don't want to, people want to quit, but they're unable to.
Right.
And so I loved what you said about getting to the cause, like root cause. What's the deal here? What is why am I doing this behavior? Like you said, we're trying to compensate, right? Like, and tell us a little bit in a scenario where you're not able to have that closure, right? Somebody hurt you, but you're not able to have that closure. But, how do you navigate that? If you're able to and go to that person, talk it out, it's resolved, that resentment, bitterness, you're forgiven, you've moved on, you start to heal. But if you're unable to in a situation, like what would you say to someone?
You need to talk to somebody. You must have support.
Yes.
We are a lot smarter together than we are by ourselves.
Absolutely.
And we need others. We need community. Yeah. And we need someone. I tell everybody they need someone speaking into their life to call them out when they need it. They need someone to encourage them. Yeah. And they also need someone that they're investing in life. Yeah. I call it a Paul, Barnabas, and Timothy from the Bible, but it's someone you need a mentor, an encourager, and someone that you're investing in, which gives your life meaning. And we need it those times, those people that will point things out in our life that we don't necessarily appreciate, but eventually we say thank you. Yeah. And so at the time, I realized later my mother was praying for me. Yeah. My sister was praying for me. I had people that were caring for me from afar. My church, in fact, another interesting part of the story, a church I would eventually become music and youth pastor of. My sister was in a Bible study class there. They were praying for Sandra's wayward brother at that time. And I would eventually not only get things together, but I would eventually go minister to all those people that had been praying for me. That's God's little wink at me. Yeah. But there were a lot of people praying. And to the point I heard a voice, almost audible, like I say, in my mind, driving in my car. How crazy is that? But it happened. Yeah. I had a real successful senior year after I'd gotten out of my rock band.
Mm-hmm.
Went to college and had a car accident, matter of fact, as a freshman. Had to leave Baylor University, go to Texas Wesleyan to be kind of watched out for, just make sure everything was good. I had scholarships. I was actually salutatorian in my senior class because that decision helped me to really focus on school again. And so all of that was very helpful. I was majoring in religion and psychology. I had two other good friends that, again, pointed things out in my life and said, by the way, you're a musician. Why aren't you a music major? And I went, well, duh. And so I changed my major to music education, a double major in music and education. And while there, had great teachers. We were a very close community, and met my wife, and we got married in almost 50 years ago now.
Oh, congratulations!
Our 50th anniversary year. And then I continued that call to ministry. She thought she'd always married a minister. And so I actually was managing a music store, working at a church as a music minister part-time in early marriage. And we had the opportunity to go minister in Burleson, Texas. I was there for 22 years. And all that time, knowing that I was not as wise as I needed to be, I became a sponge. I was listening to every mentor, every person I could, being discipled, being invested in, working with other churches around me and church leaders, learning from them, to the point that I also wanted to help other people learn too. I was teaching at seminary. I actually ended up being a teaching fellow for music theory. And so I taught music theory for a while. And at that time, I met a young man, Steve Letty, who taught me how to pray and how to read my Bible. Now, all this time in all my relationship, being a believer since I was 12, no one had sat me down and said, here's how you pray and here's how you read your Bible.
And how old were you at this point?
I was about 22, 23. And so even though I was a churchgoer, I was not self-feeding. And I believe that's why today I want everyone to be independently dependent upon Jesus Christ. Independently, on their own. Nobody has to make you do things. And so he taught me that. And I went, well, what is this about? He said, this is discipleship. And I said, well, I love that. I want more of that. And so the same time I went to a conference where my good friend Barry had just come up with a strategy for ministry called Jesus Focused Youth Ministry. And it's just basically you internalize, you have your own personal walk, you train leaders, and then you try to do ministry.
So Rick, you were able to help students, mainly middle school,
Yes,
with to help high-risk students, and you had a program. Would you tell us a little bit about that, please?
it was based, we had a good friend that wrote some wonderful materials. Dr. Stephen Russell was a psychiatrist and a Christian man. And he put together an intervention and prevention program that we actually got cited in the state of Texas for excellence for. And we went in and we helped students talk about self-esteem, peer pressure, just confronting the things that were their real issues, and defense mechanisms, blaming and withdrawal, and all the things we do to get out of the situation. And we basically taught them, you must take responsibility for what you do. And we taught them a number of great principles, but we also, part of that was we would put a chart up and we'd say, what behaviors do you see? That's the middle column. What behaviors do you see on your campus? And they'd say smoking, drinking, drugs, all these different things, life-controlling problems like we talked about. Then the left column, we would have them say, well, what do you think caused these? And they put divorce, anger, depression, self-esteem. They identified some of those issues. Then we went to the right column. We said, okay, here's all of these behaviors in the middle. Let's look, what would be the results of those? And the right column became addiction, death, abortion, all kinds of really sad things. We said, what do we need to do here? Well, we need to change things around. We need to stop hurting ourselves and doing this I'll show you behavior. Even though we have anger, even though we have depression, there are other healthy ways to deal with those. And so we would teach them spiritual ways to do that. We would teach them how community can do that. Talking to a friend, a counselor, beginning to to get help before they get into these situations and then have these consequences. So we talked about consequences and taking responsibility for your own life. Basically, we need to be internalized, not externalized. And we ended with the story of Pinocchio, because that story was written by a pastor in Italy, by the way, and it's about the wooden-headed little puppet that wants to become a real boy. And you think about what he does. He thinks he's free. I've got no strings. He had string. I mean, it was, even though he thought he had no strings, everyone around him would pull his strings, found himself in a cage, found himself being used by other people. Eventually on Pleasure Island, where you see him smoking a big cigar and having a great time, supposedly, until he looked around him and everyone is turning into donkeys. And he began to turn into a donkey. When we get around people, that's who we become. That's the old truth that you become. Show me your friends and I'll show you your future. And that was the Pinocchio story. And when we shared this, everybody seemed to say, yeah, there's some underlying truth here. He found out his maker, his father, Geppetto, had been swallowed by a whale. And so he goes out and saves Geppetto. And we see the scene in the cartoon film of him laying face down. And he'd given his life for his maker. And then the good fairy comes in and says, because you proved yourself to be true, brave, and loving, then now you're real. So if you want to be real, that's how you're real. You're not into yourself. You don't let other people pull your strings. You can't nobody else can control you unless you let them. They can't make you become angry, sad, anything. No circumstance in your life has to control what your next decision is. And we need to ingrain that in ourselves, that there's some personal power we never want to give away. Those are our choices, and we can make good choices. Good choices bring good results. Bad choices bring bad results. That's the very simplistic way to put it. But sometimes I need help with those choices because it's hard, because I'm mad or angry or depressed or wounded, and I need help forgiving someone.
Rick, so I know you have a life motto. Would you share that with us, please?
It comes from Matthew 12:30, and it says that he that's not with me is against me, and he that gathers not with me scatters. So I teach everyone, and anyone that's ever been in my ministry has heard it so many times, they'll go, yeah, it's be a gatherer, not a scatterer. The reason we came up with that is we found that the last group, working with youth ministry, the last group that a pizza place would like to see come in on a Sunday night is a youth group from a church. The reason why is they would come and be loud, obnoxious, and take over the place. And here's some sweet people over here trying to have a dinner by themselves. And these young people were acting the fool, let's put it that way. And so we said, why should we be representatives that way? Let's flip the script. Instead of being scatterers, because 24/7, we're either being scatterers for God or gatherers for God. Why don't we leave this place better than we were, and let's go in quietly? When we would go into hotels on mission trips, we had a game. The game was we would go in stealth. No one would hear us go in. Go ahead to your room, have a great time. But while we're going in, we're not going to interrupt anybody. And if we go into a restaurant, one story was we actually got in late at a Burger King at like 10 minutes before closing, and all the staff were going, oh, no. And so we said, we promise we don't want to take up your time. Thank you for your service, and we will clean up for you tonight. And so they served our food. We had that place picked up, and they said, you can come in here anytime. At the hotel that we would go in quietly to, they would say, what kind of group is this? We said, well, we're a church group doing mission work. They said, we've never seen a group like this. That's cool. It's also sad, because so often our outward behavior as groups forgets anybody else that's around us. And we need to be gathering, not scattering, because there's too much bad advertisement for the Jesus that I know. Jesus never hurt anyone. He was always respectful and loved people and cared for them. And that's what I'm called to be. I'm not called to be someone that's to be served, but to serve. And so that's a motto. I tell everyone, are you a gatherer or a scatterer today?
I love that. Thought. I love that. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Definitely, you want to make an impact, make a difference, right? And those stories, that's how people can tell, wow, there's something different about them. What is that? And you
We're on
make an
the clock.
impression.
Yeah, we're on the clock 24/7,
Yeah.
not just when we go to do good things.
Right, absolutely. Rick, what is some practical advice that you want to give to us and our audience from your life experience, from your journey?
I think the most important thing I could say is live a life worthy of imitation. We're living a life, as you said, about modeling, as we talked. We have to be an example and set an example. That keeps us accountable to of how our life's going as well, and we want people to see that that's something that they can follow. And I think that's vital. A friend of mine came up with that years ago, and I never forgot it. Live a life worthy of imitation.
Rick, do you have any resources that can help students, teenagers that are watching, that can help them with their life?
There's some great resources that I know. One of my friends, Travis Deans, put out a website called 9 Month Mission Trip, which helps student. We all of our youth ministry national organizations are using the same language: prayer, care, and share. And it will help them know how to pray, how to care on their campuses, not just for students but for their teachers. Their educators really need concern and care.
Absolutely.
And also how to share their story respectfully in a way that's not nothing more than conversationally, because we want to be people's friends. We don't want to browbeat anyone, and sharing our story, that's all it is a conversation. And I can't do anything. I can't make anyone come to the Lord or anything. Only the Holy Spirit can do that. But I can tell the story, and it's very powerful how God changes lives. I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen in my life. Also, Dare to Share is an organization that I work with, and they will help youth pastors and students know how to share their story, share the gospel, how to converse with people, also how to care again for people. That's so vital that we be the hands and feet of Jesus to people, because there's so many people out there trying to use others. It's refreshing to have someone say, "What can I do for you? How can I pray for you? Tell me your story," and just listen. That's what students need more than anything right now. Is if I wanted to create a resource, I would say become a caring adult, a mentor, and get a student, listen to them, don't judge them, and say, "Tell me about it," and just let them talk.
I love that. I love that. I feel like, where we are right now, especially with the pandemic and everything, what you said is so, so helpful and powerful. It could change a life, right? Being that you model this, so that will go forward and they will do the same to someone else, and be take time to be a mentor, to listen to someone, expecting nothing in return.
Exactly.
And I love that. Rick, thank you so much for taking the time to come be on the podcast, be a guest, and share your amazing story, and for what you're doing with the youth in America. I love that. And thank you, everyone, for watching us. Really appreciate this community on YouTube. And I hope the story was encouraging, giving hope from struggles of, being a teenager, thinking this the end of the world, on how you navigated it. So I hope this was helpful. We would appreciate it if you can subscribe to our channel, like, share it with a friend, that Rick's story can resonate with them and help them. And we'll see you all on our next episode. Thank you. Bye bye.